Welcome, Smithies. You are an awesome crowd today. I'm Amanda Rivera-Lopez. I'm the Interim Vice President for Alumni Relations and the Executive Director of the Alumni Association at Smith College. And I'm really excited to welcome you all back to campus. The energy, the spirit, the memories that you bring to your reunion after many years away from Smith, or maybe it was just 5 years away from Smith, it really infuses the whole campus with fresh inspiration and with joy. Before I introduce President Sarah Willie LeBreton, I want to take a moment to give a special shout out to our alums in training, our student workers. There are some here, you will see them throughout the weekend. They're wearing these wonderful shirts that say alum in training. So they're here to support you in having a meaningful experience at your reunion, and they will join the Smith network of 54,000 alums in the years to come. Yeah. And they're really eager to meet you, and I'd love it if you take a moment to say hello, introduce yourself, get to know them as you see them around campus. I also want to recognize our incredible class and reunion volunteers. Big applause, please. Some of you I've gotten to know well on Zoom this past year, and I'm really grateful for your dedication and for your partnership in planning this year's reunion. President Sarah Willie LeBreton, President Sarah to students, arrived at Smith last July after 20 years at Swarthmore College, most recently as Provost and Dean of the faculty. An accomplished scholar, sociologist, and educator who studies social inequality and race and ethnicity, her focus for her presidential tenure is on moving Smith, and by extension, the world, forward as a community to a more joyful, just place. Please join me in giving President Sarah a warm welcome.
Thanks, everybody. Good morning. Welcome back to Smith and happy reunion. It's a joy and a pleasure to have you here and to celebrate the extraordinary connections that you share across generations to each other and to this great college. Before we go any further, I'm going to ask you, if you have an empty seat next to you, if you would raise your hand, because there are people in the back. So see all the empty seats we have? We're just going to take 30 seconds. Don't rush. There's stairs. But please feel free to grab a seat. It's a little bit like being on Amtrak. If you have a bag in the seat next to you, it's a completely full train, so we're going to ask you to put that bag under your seat. You are all part of our history, 150 years of history. So we will be doing a lot of celebrating next year in honor of that historic milestone. I've been told that there are close to 850 alums on campus this weekend. Some of you walked here from your homes in town, while others traveled far and wide to be here. There are 42 states, and in addition to the United States, I'm told that there are 11 countries represented on campus by alums this weekend, from Canada, China, France, Germany, India, Ireland, Italy, South Africa, the UK, and Vietnam. So I want to thank each and every one of you for making the trip and for keeping Smith in your hearts all of these years. I'm guessing that some of you haven't been back to campus since you graduated. I hope you'll spend some time while you're here rediscovering the magic of this place. Since I started as president last July, I've learned quite a bit about the power of the Smith experience from alums I've met in different cities across the country. These meetings have been among the most enlightening and rewarding experiences of my time at Smith so far. I always walk away from them feeling particularly energized, and I'm looking forward to visiting with larger groups of you in person over the next couple of years in major cities across the United States and the world. One of the first questions alums ask me when I meet with them, especially one-on-one, is, how can I help? For a college president, those are magical words. I thank all of you for the leadership that you provide, for recruiting students, for planning your class reunions, for mentoring our current students, for opening up your businesses and organizations for internships, for giving new graduates a chance to launch their careers, and for making gifts to the Smith Fund. Everything that you do strengthens this remarkable global community we call Smith. Thank you. I've had an exciting 10 months on the job, almost too exciting. From my first Mountain Day last fall to my memorable and moving inauguration in October, from Rally Day in February to this weekend's beautiful festivities, I have felt the full embrace, warmth, and support of the Smith community. The work that we do every day to prepare students for leadership, to solve society's challenges, is deeply meaningful to me. And I know those challenges can be minute and interpersonal, and they can also be global. So however you are doing your part to engage society in its challenges, we're grateful. What I'd like to do this morning is to begin by sharing some of the good news from campus, and then I'd like to take a deeper dive into a few of the ideas, issues, and initiatives that we're thinking about as a community. And we'll also have time for questions because I don't want to do all of the talking. I'd love to hear from you as well. First, I'd like to tell you a bit about our incredible incoming class. They come from the second largest applicant pool in Smith's history. Nearly 8,700 students applied. They'll be arriving at Smith from 46 states and Washington, D.C. They'll represent 42 different citizenships. This year, we have a record number of enrolled students from the South and Southwest. Our admission rate for the class of 2028, an indication of our selectivity, was 20.5%, down from 38% 10 years ago. Now, we know that Smithies from across the generations have always been smart and energized people. But this also tells us that contemporary Smithies are really something, and they're choosing from among the nation's most extraordinary colleges and universities. The class is also a shining example of our commitment to ensuring access. More than 20% of the class is Pell Grant eligible, and 14% are affiliated with college access organizations, including 45 students who are members of our inaugural group of QuestBridge Scholars. QuestBridge is a national organization that connects low-income and first-generation students to prestigious colleges around the country. I can't wait to welcome these new Smith Scholars to campus in the fall, and we'll know more about their racial diversity, the racial diversity of the class this summer, but we're confident that we will continue in our mission to have Smith represent the diversity of the country. In fact, we'll need you to share Smith as an option with your various networks. And I'm going to be specific here. If diverse students don't apply, then we can't admit them. And if they don't matriculate, then we don't have the critical mass that also changes some of the aspects of this culture for the better. So you can all make a dramatic difference by sharing news about Smith with your networks. I'm grateful, and I know that we'll receive your help. What's most important to us is that we continue to attract the nation's and the world's very best students, regardless of background or means. I'm going to switch topics a little bit here and share some more with you about athletics. We have amazing coaches and a golden athletics director. Their hard work led to a few record-breaking seasons this year. The rowing team, for example, picked up the 2024 NUMAC Championship, and the team also received Coaching Staff of the Year, Rower of the Year, and Co-Coxswain of the Year awards from NUMAC. Two of our track stars were honored with national awards as well. Priya Parker was named All-American at the NCAA Division III Indoor Track and Field Championships, and Lyda Martin was the New England champion in the 1,500-meter race. You are an enthusiastic group. Those who followed this year's basketball season know that it was one for the history books. For the first time ever, the team made it all the way to the NCAA Division III National Championships. I was there in Cincinnati for the first game of the tournament, and let me tell you, it was thrilling. I could barely contain my excitement at watching our amazing players tear up the court. And we know that when women tear up the court, with collaboration and teamwork, that translates into their professional lives. Alums from the region came out in full force, meeting the team at the airport, cheering them on at the game, and then later celebrating the players like rock stars. Ultimately, the Pioneers lost to NYU by 5 baskets in the second game, but that didn't diminish the level of excitement that greeted the members when they returned to campus. Coach Lynn Hersey deserves high praise too. She's had more than 300 career wins, has won National Coach of the Year 2 years in a row, and knows how to bring out the best in our players. And she has decided to be at Smith. So congratulations to all of our athletes, whether they're playing in club sports or varsity. You'll be excited to know that Smith has once again earned the distinction of being a top producer of Fulbright Award recipients nationwide, with 10 Fulbright Scholars this year. With 10 Fulbright Scholars this year, Smith ranks in the top 12 of highest producing institutions. In the past 5 years, 50% of Smith applicants have been offered awards, making us one of the most competitive colleges in the country. Over the last 10 years, more than 175 Smithies have received Fulbrights. They've carried out projects in more than 40 distinct fields of research in 160 countries. The strength of our Fulbright program speaks to the exceptional global education that Smith provides and to the dedication of faculty in preparing students for academic success. Speaking of faculty, several scholars from across campus received prestigious national recognition and other accolades this past year. Here are just a few examples. Loretta Ross, professor of the study of women and gender, was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame, along with a class that included Ruby Bridges, Kimberly Crenshaw, and Serena Williams. Not bad company. Just last month, English professor Michael Gora was elected to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. Michael is a phenomenal scholar, teacher, and author who has also had National Book Critics Award Circle and a Guggenheim Fellowship. Katie Schneider from the art department had the distinction of being chosen to paint the official portrait of New York Times publisher Arthur Ox Sulzberger Jr. She said that painting the portrait took more than 200 hours because she was given only one photograph to work from. The portrait now hangs in the New York Times building along with portraits of the paper's other publishers. A fun fact, you can view Katie's portrait of former Smith president Carol Christ in the Nielsen Library. After a national search, Daphne Lamoth, professor of Africana Studies at Smith, has been named Smith's new provost and dean of the faculty, succeeding Michael Thurston. And our current provost, Michael Thurston, is taking a sabbatical at the University of Oxford and then returning to the Smith faculty that he loves. As a fellow scholar, I'm so pleased to be part of such an extraordinary community of scholars whose work lifts Smith's reputation as a premier liberal arts college. One of the first things I did early in my presidency was start a new tradition that we're calling First Tuesdays. Once a month, the entire campus community, faculty, students, and staff is invited to get together on a Tuesday morning over coffee and donuts. There's no agenda. It's simply a great opportunity for us to meet people we don't know. Smith may be a small college, but it's also a big place. It's a busy place, and it can be difficult for folks to get to know one another, especially out of their particular departments or offices. And I think we need to work on strengthening our interpersonal muscles, particularly after COVID. So First Tuesdays is building a stronger sense of community. A couple of other things I'd like you to know about. Smith's Physics Department recently earned a bronze award from the Physics and Astronomy Sea Change Committee for the department's efforts to create a more inclusive and diverse physics program. The inaugural award recognizes the department's work to consider structural adjustments regarding equity, diversity, and inclusion from an institutional perspective. Smith was one of 11 institutions nationwide to participate in the pilot Physics and Astronomy Sea Change program. There's something that I just learned the other day, having met with the physics department, and that is that if we were graduating physics majors in proportion to our size, we would have one physics major a year, but we have between 10 and 20 a year. So we are punching above our weight. And we're making it count in the classroom. And because departments like physics have taken diversity so seriously, including gender diversity, because our faculty and our staff and our lab instructors identify as women and men and non-binary people, everyone is doing the work to think about how sexism and patriarchy may influence our teaching and how they can root it out and really become a welcoming place. I hope some of you were able to make it back to campus last month on April 13th when we hosted the first ever Smith Arts Day. Across campus, there were concerts by the music department, dance performances, an interactive mural, large-scale art installations, 10-minute pop-up dance parties, and a performance of Romeo and Juliet by Smith Shakes, the Student Shakespeare Organization. It was really a beautiful celebration of Smith's creative community. In fact, my husband and I heard the music well past our bedtime. Finally, in another arts-related initiative, admission to the Smith College Museum of Art is now free to the public. And this is thanks to two alums, Jan Fulgraf-Golan, class of 1971, and Jane Timken, class of 1964. Their generosity made this possible, and I extend my gratitude to Jan and Jane. The museum also recently received a $280,000 grant from the Art Bridges Foundation that will be used to finance extended hours and develop more innovative programming to bring the arts to our community on and off campus. In fact, just recently I was so pleased to see 2 school buses pull up from Springfield and children flowing out of the buses and into the museum. So that's a really important community connection. My personal connection to the arts runs deep. My mother was a singer and a music teacher, and so I understand how exposure to arts of all kinds can transform life, spark creativity, and build bridges between cultures. I'm glad Smith is doing so much to center the arts. In all this good news, I hope you can see that Smith is a place where people are doing work of incredible consequence and meaning, pushing our world forward in powerful ways and fulfilling our founder, Sophia Smith's hope that her namesake college would continue to be a perennial blessing to the country and the world. What I'd like to do now is pivot to 4 big topics that I've been asked frequently about during conversations with alums over the last few months. Our response to recent protests related to world events, the threats and challenges to higher education, what we're doing to prepare students for career success, and our commitment to sustainability. It should only take about 3 hours. I'll begin with the topic that is most likely top of mind for many of you, the student protests and the occupation of College Hall that took place a couple of months ago. As many of you know from watching and reading the news, Smith wasn't the only college to experience student protests this spring. Thankfully, the protests here at Smith were peaceful and respectful. The reality that this is a fraught and chaotic moment for our world is unequivocal. I, like many of you, have at times felt saddened, discouraged, and deeply angered by the outsized role violence is playing in our world today. For much of the fall and spring, many of our students were experiencing these same emotions, which for some manifested in protest. The occupation of College Hall in particular occurred after supporters of the student organization Students for Justice in Palestine learned that the Board of Trustees Advisory Committee on Investor Responsibility had denied the students' request that Smith's endowment divest from all military contractors and weapons manufacturers. I need to pause here and share that I am very proud of the fact that for all intents and purposes, Smith College is divested from weapons companies. We have no direct investments, and significantly less than 1% of the endowment is occasionally exposed in a passive index fund. This fact was an important aspect of the ACIR's decision-making. Over the course of the nearly 2-week occupation, which ended peacefully and quietly on April 9th, I met with students not only to discuss their demands, but to better understand how they were metabolizing the extreme violence here in this country and elsewhere in the world, particularly around Israel and Palestine. And I can tell you this, Smith students want to change the world. They want change on campus, they want to be heard, and they want us all to be better humans. These are noble goals. And many students were very frustrated with me, and I'm sure that some of you may have been too. I can share with you that they wanted me to make the kinds of public political statements to which they were sure that world leaders would listen and react. I made it clear, and I'll make it clear to everyone here today, that first and foremost, I will not tolerate threats of violence, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or hate of any kind on this campus. Such behavior is antithetical to the kind of community to which we aspire. The other idea I wanted students to understand was that a college like Smith can play a particular role in helping us to parse and contextualize troubling world events or circumstances that affect our lives and our communities. However, that role is different from what governments can do, what individuals can do, and from what public agencies can do. I believe it is our job as an educational institution, and my job as president in particular, to create an environment where we expect that people will exchange ideas and express their opinions vigorously and respectfully, and will be considerate listeners, swayed if their minds change. That exchange of ideas may at times take the form of peaceful assemblies or protests, but our collective goal is listening to each other and engaging in deeply meaningful conversations without fear of retribution, violence, or threats. We must learn to engage in the kind of animated and sometimes challenging conversations that many of us remember from our own college days, but may even be struggling to have today with our friends and neighbors. As we move forward, especially in the fall when students return, we will continue to educate, to listen, to model respect, to be educated by our students, and again, to listen. because listening really does lead to understanding. I will say, too, that I have a particular role, and I believe my role is to protect the rights of students to demonstrate, to protest, to learn, to have those hard conversations. These, to me, are the principles of democratic living and the hallmarks of American higher education. I've been asked numerous times about the challenges that colleges and universities are facing. Some common arguments being made against higher education are that we are no longer about education, but rather about indoctrination, that the return on investment is minimal at best, that colleges and universities are out of touch with reality, that enrollments are down because colleges are no longer relevant. Sadly, it appears as if many Americans in particular have lost confidence in higher education. Perhaps it's more accurate to say that people seem to have an ambivalence, an ignorance about the value of higher education. And to be fair, some of this ambivalence is understandable. Student debt and the cost of higher education are big issues in this country, and we have yet to adequately address them. Institutions of higher learning have not done enough to convince people that different perspectives and points of view are a part of the fabric of campus cultures. And colleges need to do a better job of making the connection between higher education and career success. I'll talk more about that in a minute. I believe that much of the distrust and ambivalence we're seeing stems from ideological forces that are seeking to distract people from other issues. Last year's Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, for example, will surely have a chilling effect on schools seeking to reflect the extraordinary diversity of this country, and on students who may not even apply because they believe that they are no longer welcome on elite college campuses. I see the court's ruling as an attempt by certain factions to change the face of leadership in the United States. College graduates, particularly graduates of highly selective schools like Smith, hold an outsized proportion of leadership positions in this country. If barriers to college are put in the way of any students, but in this case, students of color, then their opportunities for high-level leadership positions are significantly diminished. And what I consider, and I think you do too, progress is stalled. What rulings like this fail to consider is that diversity is actually a strength. Any of us who were firsts in any way, in our workplaces, in our graduate schools, in our volunteer organizations, understand the power of this kind of momentum. The more we can continue our forward growth in recruiting a diverse student body, the better for our country, for our world, and of course, for our dear campus. In such an extended moment like the one we are in now, it's important for us to remember what we know to be true. Education helps students dream big. Education helps students to see the possibilities open to them. Education ignites passions and interests students may never consider otherwise. And education helps our society. Higher education in particular should be available to all who seek it. As graduates of this college, you know better than anyone the transformative power of education, and in particular the Smith experience. In the face of these external challenges, we at Smith are leaning into our mission to educate students for lives of distinction and purpose. We're more committed to access and affordability than ever. Our historic no loans policy is truly transforming the lives of students, making it possible for graduates to launch their lives with minimal to no debt. In fact, recent figures show that need-based loans taken out by Smith students in the fall of 2021 totaled about $4 million. By the fall of 2023, loans taken up by Smith students were down to $640,000. And we're on the way to making that number zero. We are doubling down on our efforts to recruit that diverse student body. As I said, we'll need everyone at Smith and everyone in the Smith community to help us in this effort. As president, I believe that the liberal arts education Smith and other colleges and universities like us provide prepare students with the human-centered skills that are fundamental to our well-being. The ability to think across boundaries, to use data and technology in value-driven ways, to interrogate assumptions, and to insist on truth-telling, and to act as global citizens, feeling and acting on our responsibility to our neighbors in our towns and cities across the world. This is our superpower. This is our value. This is how we distinguish ourselves. Next, I'd like to tell you a little bit about how we're reimagining career development in some big ways. Calls for return on investment, or in other words, that students have jobs upon graduation, are particularly loud among affluent parents, but they are particularly urgent among students of color and students from low-income families, who often lack the personal networks and financial assets to access programs that lead to successful careers. For first-generation students, the College Career Center might be the first place they've ever received advice on a career path. Solid data about student motivations and needs, coupled with evidence about the results of successful career education, have led us to develop a new vision for career development here at Smith. One that provides every student with access to meaningful, thoughtful, and inclusive opportunities to develop a vision for their career, not just junior or senior year, but from the moment they set foot on campus. And when I say a vision, I don't mean having the same job throughout a lifetime. The most recent data tells us that students graduating from college today may have up to 17 jobs in their lives. When I think about my parents' generation, particularly my father, the expectation was that he would have a career at the same place throughout his life. So that's a hugely dramatic change, which means that built into the education we offer has to be the kind of flexibility, persistence, and curiosity to keep retooling throughout one's career. The most visible manifestation of our efforts will be the new Kathleen McCartney Hall, which is currently under construction along College Lane. We envision McCartney Hall as a hub where students can imagine their futures and connect with experts, mentors, and advisors who can guide them and help them realize their career paths and their career dreams. We're focusing on 3 key areas: networks, career planning, and experiential learning. In everything we do, we are finding ways to democratize access to the kind of careers that bring joy, satisfaction, the opportunity to make a difference, and financial security. The building will be home not only to our career development office, but also to the Wyrtle Center for Leadership. So there will be a nice synergy between the 2 departments. I think subcutaneously, sub rosa, something, helping our students appreciate that they, subconsciously, maybe that's the word I was looking for, that they can and should imagine their careers as careers of leadership. To support students' targeted career planning and skill building, we've facilitated more than 1,200 digital connections among students and alums who have stepped forward as mentors in these fields and more, and that's just this year. So we're looking forward to bringing you into all of this too, because while 1,200 digital connections is lovely, there are 54,000 of you. Career readiness is an amplification of the liberal arts because it prepares students with a sense of agency and ability to be creative, to adapt, and to engage in meaningful work in an increasingly complex world. Indeed, I'm convinced that impactful career development has just as much power to instigate lasting global change as the lessons taught in the classrooms across campus. By making career development a central tenet of the Smith experience, Smith will undoubtedly stand out among our peers. The last big topic that alums I've talked to want to know about is related to what Smith is doing to reduce its environmental footprint and to prepare students to address the climate crisis. This is such a critical issue, and I'm glad alums are thinking about it as much as we are. Smith is addressing the climate crisis head-on. We can all take great pride in our commitment to reach net zero emissions by 2030. The most visible project is our campus-wide geothermal energy initiative. You'll see many of the construction zones as you explore the campus this weekend. Now in its second year, the project is replacing the college's aging fossil fuel-fired steam heating system with a state-of-the-art electrically powered geothermal system. When it is completed in 2026, it will reduce the college's carbon emissions by 90%. This, combined with other initiatives, will allow us to reach carbon neutrality before 2030. This project makes Smith one of only a handful of schools in the country to achieve net zero carbon emissions through the elimination of fossil fuel combustion, rather than through other means, such as carbon offsets. We're also ensuring that with any new construction, sustainability is a guiding principle. The new Nielsen Library, designed by Maya Lin, is one of the most energy-efficient buildings on campus. It was constructed with natural materials like wood and stone and is certified LEED Gold, meaning that it meets or exceeds rigorous standards for efficiency and health of the environment. Ford Hall, our engineering building, is also a LEED Gold building. And the new Kathleen McCartney Hall, which I mentioned earlier, will be constructed with responsibly sourced timber and will feature a living roof, among other sustainable elements. There are other less visible, but just as impactful ways that Smith is working to save the health of the planet. In the spring semester, our dining services chefs, for example, received training from culinary specialists from the Humane Society of the United States to develop more plant-based meal options for students. This training session was just one piece of a larger effort to reduce meat consumption on campus by 15% and to focus on more locally sourced food. This is just making me think. I remember having a dinner party where I had a number of vegetarian friends attending and talking to my grandmother about what I was serving. And I got done with the menu and she said, describing the menu to her, and she said, "Well, where's the meat dish, dear?" And I was just thinking about how, with each generation, we're understanding more about our relationship to the environment. And our students are really pulling us to catch up with them in beautiful ways. I can't talk about sustainability efforts without addressing some of the ways that we are weaving these issues throughout the curriculum. Our Center for the Environment, Ecological Design, and Sustainability is really the hub of so much of this work. The center helps make connections between academic programs and real-world sustainability challenges. Since 2013, Smith has offered nearly 100 courses each academic year that intersect with sustainability topics and themes. These courses are offered across about 50% of our academic departments. We've had sustainability-themed art exhibits and dance productions that use the environment as part of the performance. Students have partnered with the City of Northampton to design parks and to help solve issues related to stormwater drainage, salamander migration, and local agriculture. I firmly believe that colleges like Smith have a responsibility to model the change that we want to see in the world beyond our campuses. From these examples, I hope you see that Smith is taking decisive action to reduce its environmental footprint and to chart a more sustainable future for all of us. Friends, it's terrific to have you here. As I come to the end of my formal remarks, I want you to know how grateful I am to be in this position as Smith's president. I approach my work with humility and respect for the responsibility of carrying forward Sophia Smith's legacy. So many good things await us. We'll begin with a formal strategic planning process soon to chart Smith's future, and next year we'll celebrate the college's sesquicentennial. I am so looking forward to being able to reflect on our past and Smith's enduring place in the world. All of you are contributors to that history, and now I invite you to write Smith's next chapter with me. Thank you. Thank you, friends. Amanda?
We have fantastic questions.
Oh, okay. I'm ready.
Can you tell us more about how the arts are being integrated across the curriculum to help students become more creative problem solvers?
That's a lovely question. I'm kind of going to make some things up as I go, because I'm new. I do think that the centralization of having somebody who's a facilitator for all the arts on campus has been enormously important. Lee Fagan is the inaugural person in that role, and she is working with all of the departments that have anything to do with the arts. One of the things she's done is just make sure that everything that's happening all year long is accessible to people. So folks know when there's a play and a dance performance and an orchestra performance or a night when people are jamming together. And that didn't used to be as accessible. But I think as we look forward to imagine her role more deeply, we can think of ways in which there could be much more collaboration outside of the arts and between and among arts departments and the rest of the campus. So I could say more if I knew more, but I'd be lying to you. I'm really thrilled that we had this first Arts Day because the participation was so robust. So there is a hunger for it. And one of the things that I'm appreciating coming out of COVID is that people are looking for ways to be in community with each other. And that's often most facilitated by the arts. And whether that's going and listening to people singing or singing with each other, whether that's watching people dance or dancing together, whether that's going to see art or making art together, all of those things actually help us increase our sense of community and mutuality. So I'll answer that question better at the next reunion.
At the end of your first year, what stands out as Smith's unique strengths as an institution?
That's a lovely question. I guess one of the things that surprised me the most being here is the aspirations for Smith, the attachment to it, the affection for it, even when students are annoyed with me, with somebody else, with some policy. They almost always describe that frustration as because they love Smith so much. And I don't think that's just making something up. I think that's very genuine. I was stunned when I first arrived at how many students passed by the front of my house. And I've just recently had shades installed. Because I like to eat breakfast in my bathrobe, and But I would come out of the house every single morning and people would wave to me and greet me. And that was very, very distinct from the other campuses that I had been on. So that was just a beautiful, a kind of affection, a politeness, a kindness, an excitement. Now that kind of level of, there were also a couple of students who were almost shaking with excitement, and that I also hadn't seen before. And we know that kind of, right, that all that brimming with the emotion of what it means to be 17 to 23, right? There's a lot in that time, in that moment, that feels emotional and is deserving of emotion because it's a pretty dramatic transition. Often people coming from their families of origin away from home for the first time, sometimes not, but that's the majority experience. And that too can turn, right, when people are really upset or frustrated. So the level of the emotion remains high, right? So I also noticed, about half of the students stopped speaking to me when I decided not to make a public political statement about the situation in Israel-Palestine. And I think that investment, I think that level of passion is not only about age. I think it is about seriousness of purpose. I think it is about empathy. I think it's about compassion. And I think it's something that Smithies take with them here, maybe a little bit more emotionally calibrated as we age and mature, but you all take with you into your adult lives. And that level of passion, compassion, empathy, seriousness of purpose, I have not seen on the other college campuses where I've worked. So that has been a surprise and a delight. And I really do think it's part of our superpower. Yeah.
I love that. So this alum has written, when Ruth Simmons was president, I was a junior and senior. After meeting me once, she remembered my name when she saw me again. How do you make time to get to know current students while balancing your duties with fundraising and the alum community?
That is a lovely memory. And Ruth Simmons has one on me. I remember faces. I'm not as good with names, and I was at Swarthmore for 26 years. So I did have to shift, I won't say throw out all of the Swarthmore names, but I did have to shift to an inactive file in my brain, all of the Swarthmore names, so that I could make room for the Smith names. And I'm thrilled that I have. There have been, I think, more opportunities than I might have imagined. One is, it is important to me to get to know students, but it's important for me to get to know janitors and dining service workers as well. And one of the first things that I did was ask my team to facilitate those kinds of meetings. I'm still having them because there are more than 1,500 employees, and if I'm going to actually have a meaningful conversation with a small group and really hear what they have to say, that cannot be rushed. But it was very, very meaningful to me to hear glazers and plumbers and carpenters and grass cutters say, snowblowers. I had never met a president before. And I was really pleased because that was not hard for me to do, and I learned something along the way. I forgot what the question was.
You answered it beautifully.
Students. It was about students. Yeah, so, okay. I've had open office hours, and open office hours have really helped me get to know students. Oh, but this is the other piece. So after the Hamas attacks, it felt extremely important for me to meet immediately with Jewish students. And then it also felt very important to me after Israel began its retaliation to meet with Palestinian and Arab students. And again, those conversations cannot be me talking at those students. They had to be me listening. And I didn't do it alone. I brought the dean of the college with me, Alex Keller. I often brought the vice president for equity and inclusion with me, Floyd Chung. Sometimes there was another adult there, sometimes not. But mostly it was listening, checking in with them first. How are you doing? Do you know folks over there? Do you have folks over there? And one of the things that became hard but also crucial was the more I listened, the more students talked. And the more students talked, the more they began to recognize that they did not have a monolithic or universal experience or politics. And that was not easy, but it was so important. For us to begin to acknowledge that we come at conflicts like this from very different lived experiences that are also legitimate. So I met with students more than I expected, and then there was another meeting with Jewish students, and then there was another meeting with Palestinian and Arab students. And then I had the office hours, and the office hours also became really lovely places for me to meet students. I mean, the first one we had, my extraordinary assistant, Kat Dolan, had set aside, I think, maybe 2 hours, and I was there with Alex Keller, the dean of the college, and we thought maybe we'll get 5 or 6 students, and the line went down the stairs. And so I was going to speak for about 10 minutes with each student. So, Kat knocks at the door when we knocks at the door after the first group of students and says, I'm sorry, we're going to have to bring it down to 8 minutes. She knocks on the door at the next one and says, I'm sorry, it's going to have to be 6 minutes. And she knocks on the door again and says, it's going to have to be 4 minutes. And I said, that's it. No. We're going to keep meeting with students, and we're just going to have to schedule another set of office hours. But I think those touchstones, along with the conversations, the serendipitous conversations that I had walking in front of the house, students would often walk with me all the way to College Hall or walk me home. And I really say walk me home because they would tell me. And it would be a variety of things. I'm having a hard time here. I'm kind of lonely. Things are frustrating. Or I love Smith. And so it would be, I felt like I was getting, a bit of all of it. And I would try very hard to remember people's names, but as I said, I remembered people's faces. And one of the tricks that I learned from my dad, who was always also had his career in higher education, was that when I forget a name, I can always just say, "How's my favorite scholar?" So there's just been a little bit of that this year. My next answer will be shorter, I promise.
We all appreciate that tip. That's great. Okay, we have one final question among many fantastic questions. If you could ask the alum community one thing to help more, help better, step up for, what would it be?
Oh, this is an easy one. It's an easy one because I'm going to be very candid here. Most of what's happening on college campuses is not accurately represented in the newspapers. This is not to say that there are students who feel deeply uncomfortable and on some campuses unsafe. This is not to say that there are students who feel misinterpreted and unheard. It is to say that there are often beautiful things happening on campus that don't get represented in the news. And very, very difficult and delicate kinds of conversations that faculty, staff, administrators, and students themselves are trying to manage. I will share with you that our House presidents did an extraordinary job this year. They don't have houses that have students with just one political viewpoint in them. And so many House presidents, not all, but many House presidents asked their houses what would serve you best. And in some cases that was, let's take an extra hour to talk about this every single week, right? No question is off limits. No question is stupid. We're just going to educate each other. Other House presidents heard, I don't want to talk about this in my house. I want to just come back and feel like this is a place I don't have to think about it. So there were a variety of things going on. I was very, very proud of our students. Some of our students were very self-righteous and very laser-focused on a particular goal, and sometimes had difficulty with peripheral vision, right? And by that I mean sometimes had difficulty appreciating with empathy students who may have been their friends but felt uncomfortable sharing with them what their experience was, what their parents' experiences were, what their politics were, and why. So I think we have a ways to go in terms of really having those hard conversations. And certainly I know that in my adult communities, those are hard conversations to have. Few people are having them in ways that really leave people feeling good and heard and understood. And so if they're hard for us, they're going to be hard for brand new adults, right, who are often away from home for the first time. So I would say, insofar as you feel you are able to do this, be ambassadors for Smith. Share with them that even if we haven't met all of the goals that we're striving for now on campus, it hasn't stopped us from aspiring for them. And we are going to get there. We are devoted to becoming more tolerant, more empathetic, more compassionate, more diverse. We are devoted to these goals, and we are going to get there. But we need you to be ambassadors for us. And I think if you feel like you are able to do that with us, that will make all the difference in the world. So thank you so much.